For nearly anyone watching this video, the story of the Revenge of the Sith is likely very familiar. The tragic story of Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side is without a doubt one of the best to have ever been told, from the Battle of Coruscant to Operation Nightfall to Mustafar. The part of the story told on Mustafar is the most iconic, and it's essentially split into two parts, being the slaughter of the Separatist Council and Vader's duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi. In this video, we'll be addressing the former of those two, and why it's so much more important than you'd think.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Just before we get into it, guys, I want to ask a quick question. How many of you have a wallet in your pocket that's oversized, bulky, and carries around so much pointless stuff, half of which you probably don't even remember what it's used for? Well, if that's the case, then Ridge, the sponsor of today's video, has you covered. Ridge is a company that has redesigned how the masculine wallet should look like and feel like. It's got a sleek design with two metal plates bound together by a durable elastic band, and it looks nothing like the traditional wallet. It looks a lot better and has designs like titanium, aluminium, and carbon fiber, like the one I'm using in the video, to ensure that there's options for everybody. This beautiful wallet is essentially a minimal front pocket wallet that's designed to streamline what you carry every single day, and I love it. And I'm obviously not the only one, as there's more than 30,000 5-star reviews, and in general, it's just the better way to carry around your cash and your cards. Also, you can get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping by going to ridge.com/Geetsly. That's ridge.com/Geetsly and use code Geetsly, link in the description and comment section below. There's a very memorable part of this sequence in which Anakin is slaughtering the Separatists when he turns to face the camera, revealing that his eyes have become yellow. This phenomenon is nothing new. It's normal for those who fall to the dark side to adopt this trait. But for some who watch this sequence, the timing of that reveal seems a bit odd. Why then? Why before Vader truly becomes Vader, or why after having already committed crimes that, in comparison, were much worse than killing a bunch of war criminals? What makes slaughtering the Separatists so crucial of an alignment shift for Anakin Skywalker's character? After all, Vader showed no signs of Sith Eyes during or after Operation Nightfall, the attack on the Jedi Temple in which, among others, he killed children. You could chalk it up to him just masking it at first, as Sidious and Dooku often did, and as Vader himself did before and during his battle with Obi-Wan, but there's more to it than that. The Separatist Council massacre was indeed the major alignment shift for Vader, not Operation Nightfall, and to understand why, we need to take a closer look at the event itself. The movie depicts the mission to Mustafar as a fairly straightforward affair in which Vader walked into a room and quietly murdered a dozen or so people. But as those of you who have read Matthew Stover's glorious novelization of the movie know, the novel depicted it much differently. This version of the massacre is a lot more morbid. In the novel, Vader thoroughly enjoys the entire thing, cracking jokes at the expense of dying counselors in a manner that really blurs the line between Anakin and Vader to a rather uncomfortable degree. To give you a better picture, have a few select moments. Shu Mei, president and CEO of the Commerce Guild, looked up from her knees, hands clasped before her, tears streaming down from her shriveled cheeks. "We were promised a reward," she gasped. "A handsome reward." "I am your reward," the Sith Lord said. "You don't find me handsome?" "Please," she screeched through her sobbing. "Please." The blue-white blade cut into and out from her skull and her corpse swayed. A negligent flip of the wrist slashed through her column of neck rings. The head of the Techno Union turned at his approach, cringing, arms lifted to shield his faceplate from the flames in the dragon's eyes. "Please, I'll give you anything you want." The blade flashed twice. Tamor's arms fell to the floor, followed by his head. "Thank you," Anakin said. Newt Gunray, Viceroy of the Trade Federation, stood trembling in an alcove, blood-tinged tears streaming down his green-mottled cheeks. "The war," he whimpered. "The war is over! Lord Sidious promised. He promised we would be left in peace." His transmission was garbled. The blade came up. "He promised you would be left in pieces." That isn't even all of it. Vader treated the slaughter of the Separatist Council almost like a joke, and at the very least, he enjoyed the whole thing. This is why it's significant, and why it was the final piece required for Vader to be consumed by the dark side. It's reminiscent, though not a complete match, for a Sith initiation ritual in fact. A ritual that we've touched on before. Let's take another look at that ritual. It was always common for Lords of the Sith to kill people close to them as a sort of proof of worthiness, but Darth Bane enshrined it as a proper tradition for the Order of the Sith Lords. Under Bane, Sith proved themselves worthy by using the dark side, which is to say using one's emotions to bend the Force to one's will, and then cutting off what emotionally grounded them in the universe, with the theoretical results being that the only motivation that would remain for an individual that follows through with this would be the pursuit of power for oneself. This utter perversion of the Force, this willful slaughter of innocence out of pure selfish bloodlust, is where the dark side goes from a darker shade of grey to pure black. Doing this sort of thing is submerging oneself in the dark side of the Force, falling so deep into the shadows that there is little hope of getting out, as Quinlan Vos put it. It conflicts directly with the will of the Force and the natural balance of things. Using the dark side in this way is unnatural, and the outcome for any individual who does so is also unnatural. Those who use the Force to pervert life gain access to unnatural powers, but they also face unnatural detriments to their own health. Sith Eyes is the earliest and most visible example of this. It's a simple corruption of the irises of a being so that they become an unnatural bloodshot shade, a representation of what they've done with the Force. A more extreme example is, well, Palpatine's entire face, which became as messed up as it did because of the extreme degree to which Palpatine messed with the balance of the Force. And there you have it, Vader's eyes turned yellow on Mustafar because he was slaughtering innocents. Except, as most of you are probably thinking, it's not that simple. After all, Vader had slaughtered innocents before. He had just killed children earlier that day at the Jedi Temple, not to mention cases like the great slaughter of not just the men, but the women and the children too. The answer is attitude. It's pretty clear that Vader's participation in Operation Nightfall was reluctant, especially in regards to the younglings. He may have believed that the Jedi Order had become thoroughly corrupt, but having just fallen to the dark side a few hours prior, he obviously didn't think the same of the younglings, who were too young to really understand how things worked. But regardless, Vader felt that he had no choice. The Jedi Order taught that a fall to the dark side was irreversible, and having already made that choice, the only path Vader saw ahead was the one that a disturbing number of angsty American teens have taken. Furthermore, Anakin might even have justified the slaughter of younglings to himself as an act of mercy, a theory that a lot of psychological research potentially supports. After all, they were to be killed in the first place because they had already indoctrinated into the Jedi ways, and with that in mind, Anakin might have seen their slaughter as him saving them from themselves and what they've been forced into. As for the killing of the Tuscans, the other example we gave, that was more of a blind rage that Anakin justified and defended after the fact. He didn't regret it, not by a long shot as Star Wars Republic reveals, but the act itself was likely just a case of him instinctively lashing out in vengeance for his mother's murder. These motives are hardly just, but they aren't pure evil either, as the slaughter wasn't all that willful. This is where the mission to Mustafar comes in. Darth Vader's slaughter of the Separatist Council was neither instinctive nor reluctant. As we discussed earlier, he enjoyed the whole thing. Now, the moral aspect of this may be up for a little bit of a debate, but from the perspective of the Force, the councillors were innocents. They were unarmed and were far from looking for trouble, and indeed, many of them surrendered or begged for mercy as we discussed earlier. Vader slaughtered them anyway, however, and his attitude is why this matters. Vader enjoyed killing off the Separatist Council because he truly, deeply believed that what he was doing was right, a perversion of morality that none of his previous slaughters had incurred. He killed the Separatists not because Sidious told him to, but because he wanted to. He was driven by pure, malicious bloodlust, justified by a twisted sense of morality. His enjoyment of this was what submerged Darth Vader into the darkness. This sort of gleeful murder was, in a sense, an unnatural perversion of life and the Force, and the result was an unnatural perversion of his physical appearance. So that's why the mission to Mustafar and the slaughter of the Separatist Council was so important. But what do you think? Have you read the Revenge of the Sith novelization yet? And if not, how much more will it take to convince you to do so? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, make sure you check out all the links in the description below to check out our Geetsly's gaming network and all of our Discord links. Also, if you are into history, and I know many Star Wars fans are, I do have a second history channel where I discuss pretty much everything about World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, and any other history topics that come to my mind. So make sure you check that out guys, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.